The 2010 census put the number of Native Americans and Alaskan Natives in the United States at 2.9 million, but only 2 members of Congress are of American Indian descent. That was a concern among those at the convention. Native American elected officials called for more involvement from Indians in politics and offered advice on how to get started.
During my 10.5 years in Washington, D.C., I saw what an impact that what happens in D.C. in the halls of Congress, not just in the halls of Congress, but also at federal agencies in Washington, how that affected Indian country. So I figured out, at least for myself, that the most important thing, in my opinion, for Indians to do was to mobilize and get involved in the political process.
But it's imperative that we as Indian people step forward and starting with the Cherokee, or starting with the tribal councils. That's where you have to step forward and speak up for the people who will not be able to or cannot be able to speak for themselves. They have to have someone. If they don't have you or someone else, they will never be heard.
It's important, and the importance to us as Native Americans is our sovereignty is at stake. The sovereign status and the federal trust relationship that exists today between the sovereign nations of this country, that's recognized in the Constitution, not provided for, but it's recognized in the United States Constitution, is at stake. And every day we come a little bit closer to having another layer of that sovereignty peeled away. Look at the makeup of Congress. Right now, today, we have 2 people who are Native Americans in Congress. We ought to be represented a lot better than that.
I never dreamed that 25 or 30 years from the point when I was first thinking about politics that we would only have 2 members in Congress. It makes no sense, because we as Indian people, we have to band together. We're really all we have. The non-Indian people, and I'm not being negative, but look throughout history. They're not going to step forward for us. They're simply not. And for the most part, it's not being negative or being mean. They don't understand. They don't understand what it is to be Indian. And some of them may think they do, and I really admire the ones that really listen and try to learn. But oftentimes, if you haven't been there, you can't really explain it to anybody. That's why it's so important that we have folks who have been there to step up and do these things. You have to really ask yourself why you're running. Because, if you're running because you want to have a title in front of or behind your name, I promise you'll never find a title greater than Indian. That you'll never get one greater than that. So if that's the reason, you probably ought to do something else. But if you're doing it because you really believe you can make a difference, and you're tired of people not listening to Native people, and you're tired of only having 2 representatives in the United States Congress, and you're tired of only having X amount of Natives in your state legislature, if you're tired of having X amount of people in your county commissioners, if you're tired of having X amount of Natives on your city councils in towns that are vastly majority Natives, we still don't have them on the councils. So we're not talking about any one office, we're talking about all these offices. And we as Indian people should be interested in all of them. We have a tremendous amount of Native people who are qualified to setting these seats. There's no question about it. We've got to help those people get from sitting at home to sitting in the House, sitting in the Senate, sitting at the City Council, and being mayors of their communities. We've got to help those people. Hard work is great and wonderful, and you're not going to get elected unless you work hard. There's no way. But unless you raise money, you're not going to get elected either.